This is
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the month. We always welcome back this time of the month the great Chad Stone. He is Chief Economist for Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, centeronbudget.org. Always reminding you to check out his great tweet threads on the day the jobs report is released. And so we're looking at October, and here Chad is to talk to us all about it. Chad, how are you today, man?
I'm well. How are you?
Just fine, buddy. Always a pleasure to have you. And it's an ongoing pleasure. We appreciate it. We've been doing this for a number of years now.
Two recessions.
That's right. I know. It is something. All right. 531,000 jobs in October, with revisions up from August to September, up 235,000 up. So slowly, but surely things are coming back, aren't they?
Yes, we had a couple of months that were disappointingly low, but we just got revisions in them that increased them some. So if you compare the level now with what we thought it was a month ago, but with the revisions, it's now 700, as you said, it's 766,000 jobs higher, which is really quite impressive. And in fact, I think I don't want to boast, but I think I said we'd have at least 500,000 jobs this time. I don't usually make predictions, but it was just hard to believe that it could have been that low in the past 2 months. So yeah, so that's a solid report, but that means there's still 4.2 million jobs short of where we were at the start of the recession in February, or just before the recession in February 2020. So there's still a ways to go, and that's just to get back to where we were well over a year ago. And of course, there's been population growth since. So the actual amount that we have to get back is pretty substantial. But seven months of 600,000 erases the 4.2 million, and 7 months is still a long time, but it's not like it was way back a year ago when we really had a big hole.
Yeah. The unemployment rate fell, but as always, you explain to us how that's not always the most accurate number, because that does not include people who really fell off and who exited looking for jobs.
Right. The unemployment rate fell to 4.6, which is still higher than it was in February of 2020, just before the pandemic recession. But it's way down from way over 10 at the worst. But as you say, we've talked about this over the course of our recoveries from recessions, that labor force participation, the fact that the unemployment rate only counts people who are actively looking for work. And in the pandemic, a lot of people dropped out of the labor force, and labor force participation is coming back slowly. And so if we had the same labor force participation as we had before the recession, then the unemployment rate would be a truer reading. So taking into account the fact of the reduced labor force participation, a more realistic unemployment rate is a little over 7%, which is still way down from, it was 20-some% at the worst, that measure. So we still have to remember that the unemployment rate doesn't tell the whole story, that it matters about the labor force, about as many people who want to be working are really back in the labor force working, rather than still on the sideline trying to decide whether it's worthwhile going into the labor force. And it's getting more worthwhile with each jobs report as the jobs come. There are jobs available. Now, the other thing that's going on is that appropriately, people are getting more picky about what jobs they're taking. Especially lower wage workers are seeing increases, and there's a lot of competition for lower paid workers these days because of the difficulties of going back to work for lower paid workers. And so the wages have been going up, but still a fair amount of job loss there.
The share of the population also with a job. And again, folks, we look at all these numbers in context. While this is good, it still shows we have a way to go. That went up just 1/100%?
A tenth of a percent, but to the highest level since before the recession. So it's been, for all these measures, the glass is filling, but there's still a noticeable emptiness in that glass that is filling. Now, I guess when we're talking about something numbers that are supposed to go up, they are going up, but there's still a lot of room to go. Numbers that are supposed to be coming down, like the unemployment rate, are coming down, but you have to look at the right measure to know the true remaining gap.
There's also the number of people who are working part-time. That number, and without really having a choice, they have to work part-time. That number is going down too. Still not where it was, obviously, in February of 2020, but it's going down.
Right. The U6 measure of unemployment and underemployment, one of the several measures that the Labor Department publishes every Jobs Day, that looks at people who are what's called marginally attached to the labor force, which means they say they want a job, but they haven't looked in the last 4 weeks and therefore don't qualify as officially unemployed. And as we're talking about, people who are working fewer hours than they would like. That's part-time for economic reasons. And so when you add those in, you get a higher rate. But still, that's down to 8.3%, which is still above where it was in February. Like every number, it's worse than it was in February of 2020, but it's getting better.
More MIP after this message.
So, folks, here's something interesting as people are doing a post-mortem of at least Democrats from Virginia. Education in Virginia on the exit polls was more important than the pandemic, all right? That was, and the exit polls for people voted on education in Virginia. Yet, because of the pandemic, as Chad points out, 3/5 of jobs lost at the state and local level, have been education jobs.
Right.
And so sit-on budget is nonpartisan, but maybe the Democrats could have used Chad to help people understand that the issue, the people were concerned about the wrong issue. It wasn't as if education was not as vibrant, that sector was not as vibrant just because of some random reason or because of critical race theory, but rather because of the pandemic and the way you get those wheels, because they did an exit poll the other day with women. Oh, we didn't think the Democrat was gonna get our kids back in school. But if you don't deal with the pandemic, you don't get the kids back in school. And the numbers show that the pandemic has had a disproportionate effect on school reopening and everything else. So, Chad, that's kind of interesting.
So I'll observe two things. One is that the Council of Economic Advisors in the Biden administration, I served on the Council of Economic Advisors in the Clinton administration, are professional economists, and they actually have a good tweet thread on the jobs report as well. But they're not, the economists on the Council of Economic Advisors, they're in a political job, but their job really is to try to tell the story straight, and they do. And the other thing is that education jobs are definitely down, but because the going back to school schedule is so erratic, has been so erratic since the pandemic, normal seasonal patterns, which the data try to adjust for so that you can detect the underlying trend, are all distorted. And so there's a lot of margin of error around. But nevertheless, education jobs were big losers, huge losers at the beginning, and they're not back. But they're big chunk of state and local government job losses. That's right. Whether it's exactly as high as the figure I cited, it's high.
Yeah. And that's real, folks. Critical race theory isn't real, but that is real. That's what's going on. And that's not a man-made problem, so to speak. So here's the thing. You're right. You did predict that, the numbers would be up this month. It's going to be interesting, Chad. You said jobs are out there. There may be a few more if some of the local and state jurisdictions, even some of the private entities, fully enforce vaccine mandates, right? I mean, or I wonder how it will balance out. Will you have more unemployment from current employees boycotting vaccine mandates, or you have more employment from people taking up some of those jobs that the anti-vaxxers are letting go? It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, no, you have that exactly right. And in fact, if it's safer to go back to work, a lot of people are going to be going back to work. Plus, it seems to be the case that when you actually have to decide whether you're going to leave your job because of your stance on vaccines, we see a lot of people that are starting to take the vaccines rather than. So I would guess that the fact that people will feel safer going back to work will outweigh the issue with the persistent anti-vaxxers. But it's about the future. The future's impossible to predict with any reasonable certainty. But you laid it out exactly right, that there are those two conflicting things at work.
More MIP after this message.
And of course, Chad points out in his thread, as always, folks, the disproportionality of job losses in the low-wage sectors amongst African American women, amongst those without degrees, and those things happen in the best of times. Those who are foreign-born, there is disproportionality. Even that was going on in February 2020, but it is exacerbated even more now by this pandemic as well. So, folks, those things are also important to watch. But slowly the economy's coming back, and then of course it's about to be the holiday season. Matter of fact, in New York, it's already Christmas. All the Christmas decorations are already up, and I don't know when I've seen them. There were Christmas decorations going up Halloween weekend because I think people, businesses understand the need to get it, to defibrillate marketing in the economy. I'm not that crazy about seeing it that early. It's a bit, for some of us, Christmas doesn't have to be all marketing and capitalism. But be that as it may, that those are people who really understand the need to exploit what the holiday season usually brings, and that is sort of an uptick in employment.
Yeah, it'll be a complicated holiday season, in part because of the supply chain shortages that we're experiencing. So again, the data have been hard to interpret through the whole pandemic experience because it's so unprecedented and it's thrown off all kinds of things. So, but yes, people are getting ready for Christmas. It seems that's exactly right. It's been happening over time, right? Getting ready for Christmas used to be after Thanksgiving was supposed to be the start, but it's moved forward in time. I would note one thing about the race and gender disparities, that they were really wide early on and for a lot of the recovery, but Black and Hispanic men are, at least this month, are at or above the employment level than in February of 2020. Yes, black women have the highest unemployment, have the highest percentage loss, still jobs whole for them, compared with other women, compared with other men of any race. And so it's like still 4.2% jobs whole, I think, if I remember right, and that's bigger. But there's been enough of a recovery that we're getting close to back to where we were in some cases, but there's also a lot of fluctuations month to month because of the nature of the sample size of the data that we're drawing the numbers from. So there's marginal variable around them. So there's a little bit of fluctuations as we're getting closer. Back when we were way below where we were in February of 2020, the disparities were large and stood out and were along race and sex lines. Yeah, and they still are basically, but it gets a little more nuanced in what title to put on those charts, which are showing a snapshot of where we are rather than a time series. But I'm not going to put up a chart that has 12 lines. That would be too complicated.
Right. Folks, the most comprehensive thread on the employment numbers takes place at his Twitter handle every month, at Chad CBPP. Be sure to check it out if you want to be fully informed on everything that's going on. It takes, in fact, all the numbers. When the government makes its announcements on those Fridays, as they did last Friday, they'll give you the two numbers, how many jobs, what the unemployment rate is. But Chad goes even further and behind those numbers. That's why we always have him here. Also, check out the Off the Charts blogs as well at centeronbudget.org. Oh, very important, though, before I forget, this infrastructure deal even if Build Back Better doesn't make it through, and many of us aren't happy about that, is that it's stalled. But this infrastructure deal, that's going to create some jobs.
It is. It is. It takes a little bit of time for a lot of infrastructure projects to get going and generate jobs, but there's some stuff that will have some impact in the shorter run as well. It's definitely and even better, not even better, but as good. It'll be increasing the economy's capacity, supply to produce goods and services, which will down the road will be some relief on future inflation, and because the demand is not bumping up against the economy's short-run capacity to supply, because we're expanding it with the infrastructure bill.
Yeah. Chad Stone, CenterOnBudget.org. Chad CBPP for Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. At Chad CBPP on Twitter. Check him out, read what he has to say, discuss it with others, and people will see you as intelligent as people sometimes see me. Well, as intelligent people only see me when I'm talking to Chad about his numbers. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Take care, buddy. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, great to be with you. Take care.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.
Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving. Plus, high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.